The stars shimmered against the vast darkness of space. On the bridge of the last functioning communications array, Admiral Zexit looked out at what remained of the once mighty Virilian Confederation. His four eyes blinked in sequence. A sign of deep stress among his kind. 17 peaceful species had joined together over centuries to form their alliance. Now, they faced the end. "The reports from the outer systems are grim," said Commander Lil Voss, her thin frame bent over the holographic display. "The Nexus Horde has consumed 3 more colony worlds. The refugees are overwhelming our remaining safe havens." Zexataral's skin paled to a light blue. "How long until they reach Kethis Prime?" 2 weeks, perhaps less," Lil Voss replied. "Our weapons barely slow them down. Each encounter only makes them stronger as they adapt to our technology." The Admiral turned to face the 12 members of the Emergency Council. Each representative showed signs of fear in their own species' way. The Mersol delegate's gills fluttered rapidly. The Thraxi representative's spines lay flat against its back. The Wuvian counselor's compound eyes reflected the grim data displays in hundreds of tiny mirrors. "We have exhausted all conventional options," Zexateral said. "The evacuation ships cannot hold all our people. We need a miracle." He paused, knowing what he must suggest would shock the Council. "I propose we activate the ancient protocols." A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, Science Minister Korpan stepped forward, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "The Deathworlders? You wish to call the humans?" Korpan's voice was barely above a whisper. "They are more dangerous than the Horde." Zextaral had expected this reaction. The legends of the humans of Sol were told to frighten young Virilians, beings so hardy they could survive radiation that would kill most species. Creatures whose bones were reinforced with calcium, making them nearly unbreakable. Predators who could run for hours without rest. Monsters who thrived on a world of such deadly pressure, temperature extremes, and gravity that most Confederation citizens would be crushed by simply standing on its surface. "The humans have never shown aggression toward the Confederation," countered Ambassador Trilvex. "Their few trading vessels have followed all our safety protocols." "Because we keep them at arm's length," Korpan replied. "We restrict their movements, limit their technology transfers, and maintain buffer zones around their territory. If we call them, they will come in force. And then what?" "Then perhaps we survive," Zextaral said simply. The debate raged for hours. The Horde, unlike the humans, was a known threat. It moved from system to system, consuming all organic and technological material, using it to create more of itself. It showed no mercy and no desire to communicate. It simply consumed, adapted, and grew stronger. Humans, on the other hand, were unpredictable. They formed passionate attachments to ideas and people. They took risks no rational species would consider. They fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness when protecting those they cared about. But they also created art of breathtaking beauty, showed compassion to other species, and held strict codes of honor about protecting the weak. "We vote," Zexateral finally declared. "We either call the humans or we accept our extinction." One by one, the council members cast their votes. The result was 9-3 in favor of sending the call. Zexateral immediately moved to action. "Prepare the quantum transmitter," he ordered. "We will send the full details of our situation, the Horde's capabilities, and our star charts. We must be honest about our desperation." The message took 6 hours to prepare. When it was ready, Zexateral reviewed it one final time before authorization. "To the governing authorities of Earth, the Virilian Confederation faces extinction. A consuming force known as the Nexus Horde has destroyed 11 of our worlds. Our weapons fail. Our people die. We respectfully request immediate military assistance under the Galactic Crisis Protocol. We understand the risks of this request, but we have no alternatives. Coordinates and tactical data attached. Please respond." Zexateral placed his palm on the scanner. "Send it," he said. The message shot across, space toward the small blue planet that the Confederation had always watched with caution. Now that dangerous world was their only hope. For 3 weeks, the Virillians continued their desperate defense and evacuation efforts. More worlds fell. More refugees crowded onto the remaining habitable planets. The Council began to believe that the humans had ignored their plea. Then, on the 23rd day, the long-range sensors detected a disturbance at the edge of the Keethi system. At first, the Virillian officers feared it was another Horde attack, but the energy signature was different. Multiple warp signatures detected, called out the sensor officer. Configuration unknown. Not Horde, not Confederation. Zex Taral rushed to the command center. "Show me," he demanded. The main screen flickered to life. There, emerging from fold space, came a ship unlike any the Virillians had seen before. It was massive, angular, and bristling with what were clearly weapon systems. Its dark hull reflected no light except for illuminated markings on its side. "Translate those symbols," Zex Taral ordered. A moment later, the computer displayed USS Arlington, United Earth Defense Force. More ships appeared beside it. Dozens, then scores of vessels of various sizes but similar design. A fleet that dwarfed anything the Confederation had ever assembled. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer, his voice shaking. Zex Taral straightened his posture. "Put it through." The screen changed to show a human male. The Virillians in the command center instinctively stepped back from the image. The human's dense musculature was visible even through his uniform. His eyes, forward-facing like all predators, fixed directly on them with an intensity that made several officers look away. "This is Captain Samuel Wright of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said. His voice was deep and carried an authority that needed no translation. "We received your call. Help has arrived." Zex Taral took a moment to compose himself before responding. "Captain Wright, this is Admiral Zex Taral of the Virillian Confederation. Your response to our distress call is most appreciated." Wright nodded once. "We've reviewed your data on the Horde. We brought everything we could mobilize in 3 weeks. More ships are coming." "More ships?" Zex Taral looked at the tactical display again. The human fleet already numbered over 100 vessels. "How soon can we meet to discuss strategy?" Wright asked. "Immediately," Zex Taral replied. "Time is against us. The Horde will reach this world in less than 6 days." The human's expression changed subtly. His lips pulled back slightly, showing teeth, a gesture that sent a shiver through every Virillian who saw it. "Good," said Captain Wright. "We'll prepare a strike force immediately. The Deathworlders have arrived, Admiral, and we've come to hunt." The human shuttle approached the Virillian command station with a grace that surprised Admiral Zex Taral. For creatures from a high-gravity world, humans moved their ships with unexpected gentleness. The shuttle docked with a soft hiss of connecting airlocks. Zex Taral waited with Ambassador Trilvex and Science Minister Korpan. All 3 had taken mild sedatives to stay calm in the presence of the Deathworlders. None of them had ever been this close to humans before. "Remember," Trilvex whispered, "no sudden movements. Their evolutionary history as predators makes them sensitive to quick motions." The airlock doors slid open. The first human to step through was shorter than the others, but still towered over the Virillians. She wore a blue uniform with silver markings on the collar. "Lieutenant Olivia Martinez, Chief Xenolinguist for the United Earth Defense Force," she said, her translator converting her words to the musical tones of High Virillian. "Thank you for meeting with us." She extended her hand, and the 3 aliens froze. The gesture revealed the dense muscles in her arm, the quick reflexes evident in how steadily she held the position. Most alarming was how her 5 fingers splayed out, perfect for grabbing prey. After an awkward moment, Trilvex touched his own 3-fingered hand to hers briefly, trying not to shudder. "Forgive our nervousness," he said. "Your kind is legendary among the stars." "We understand," Martinez replied with a softer voice. "But today, we're allies." 2 more humans entered behind her. One was Captain Wright, instantly recognizable from the transmission. The other was a broad-shouldered male, with gray at his temples, Fleet Commander Gregory Howard, the older human introduced himself. Admiral Zexaterral, we need to move quickly. Our sensors detected Horde scout ships entering the system's outer boundary. The meeting moved to the Virillian Command Center. The humans stood rather than using the low cushions that served as Virillian seating. They loomed over the aliens, their every movement a reminder of their physical power. We've analyzed your data on the Horde, Commander Howard said. They consume biomass and technology to replicate and adapt. Conventional weapons become less effective with each encounter. Yes, agreed Corpan. Our most powerful weapons worked once, maybe twice. Then the Horde adapted. Captain Wright nodded. Show us your evacuation plans. Admiral Zexaterral activated the holographic display, showing the 17 worlds of the Confederation and the refugee movements between them. 6 worlds have fallen completely, he explained. 5 more are under active assault. We are gathering all survivors on these 3 planets furthest from the Horde's advance, but our ships are too few. We cannot save everyone. The humans studied the display with intense focus. Lieutenant Martinez took notes on a small device. Captain Wright walked around the hologram, viewing it from all angles. Your ships are designed for efficiency, not combat, Wright observed. We'll split our fleet. Half will form a defensive line to buy time. The other half will assist with evacuations. Commander Howard pointed to several locations on the map. We'll establish forward bases here, here, and here. We need to understand how the Horde fights before we commit to a full engagement. Corpan looked skeptical. You cannot understand the Horde. It is not like us, or you. It does not think. It only consumes and adapts. Martinez spoke up. Everything that evolves can be understood, and everything that adapts has limitations to its adaptation. Wright turned to his fellow humans. Martinez, coordinate with the Virillian linguists. I want seamless communication between our forces. Howard, prepare the fleet for defensive positioning. The commander nodded and touched a device on his wrist. This is Howard. Prepare strike teams Alpha through Delta for deployment. Science teams, on standby. The Virillians watched in amazement as the humans moved with purpose and speed. Where the Confederation Council would debate for days, these creatures made decisions in moments. Admiral, Captain Wright said, I need your best tactical officers assigned to my ship. They know the Horde's patterns. We need that knowledge. Zexaterral agreed without hesitation. It will be done. As the meeting concluded, an alarm sounded. A Virillian officer rushed into the room. Horde ships detected 3 light days out and closing fast. Instead of showing fear, the humans became even more focused. Captain Wright's eyes narrowed. How many? He asked. At least 50 vessels, the officer replied. Larger than previous Horde formations. Wright exchanged a look with Howard. They're learning. Good. So are we. Back aboard the USS Arlington, Captain Wright gathered his senior staff. The humans sat around a table that would have been too high for Virillian comfort. The ship hummed, with power around them. Dr. Alan Brown, what have you learned about the Horde's biology? Wright asked. The ship's chief xenobiologist touched a screen, bringing up complex diagrams. They're like nothing we've seen before, Captain. Not truly alive in the conventional sense. Each unit is part of a larger consciousness. They communicate through electrical signals similar to our neural pathways, but on a massive scale. Weaknesses? Asked Commander Howard. They're highly conductive. That's both strength and weakness. They share information instantly, but a strong enough electromagnetic pulse might disrupt them temporarily. Brown paused. And they've never encountered human physiology before. Lieutenant Martinez added, the Virillians evolved on low-gravity worlds with stable climates. Their biology is efficient but fragile. The Horde adapted to counter their weapons and tactics. But not ours, Wright concluded. Chief Engineer Diane Russell spoke next. I've been studying their ship designs from the Virillian data. Their organic technology, hybrids. I think we can modify our shield frequencies to disrupt their communications. Wright nodded. Do it. What about our weapons? Standard railguns and plasma torpedoes should be effective initially, Russell replied. But we'll need to keep changing our approach. Once they adapt to one weapon, we switch to another. Security Chief Kyle Thompson, A barrel-chested man with a scar across his jaw leaned forward. "My Marines are ready for boarding actions if needed, sir. We've been training in the adjusted gravity chambers." Wright stood up. "Good. We have 6 days before the main Horde fleet reaches Kethis Prime. Our mission is twofold: protect the evacuation and understand the enemy." He walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Among them were the Virillian ships, elegant, fragile vessels never designed for war. "The Confederation sent that distress call because they had no other choice," Wright said quietly. "They fear us almost as much as they fear the Horde. We need to show them that humanity's strength isn't just in our bodies or our weapons. It's in our determination to protect life, even alien life." He turned back to face his officers. "Let's go hunt." Across the system, the Horde ships moved steadily closer. They had encountered and consumed 17 species before the Virillians. Each one had made the Horde stronger. Each one had ultimately failed, but they had never met humans before. The Horde arrived at Kethis Prime sooner than expected. Their ships moved like a dark cloud against the stars, each vessel partly mechanical and partly organic. The fleet numbered in the hundreds now. They had consumed 2 more Virillian outposts. On their way to the main world, Admiral Zex Terrell watched from the command center as the human ships moved to intercept. The United Earth Defense Force had positioned their vessels in a formation unlike anything the Virillians would have attempted. Instead of a defensive wall, the human ships spread out in small, mobile groups. "They are exposing themselves," worried Trilvex. "The Horde will pick them off one by one." "Perhaps," Zextarl replied. "Or perhaps they know something we do not." The first clash came at the outer moon of Kethis Prime. 5 human ships engaged a Horde cluster 3 times their size. The Virillians expected a quick defeat. Instead, they witnessed something extraordinary. The USS Arlington led the attack. It fired weapons unlike any the Confederation had developed. Massive metal projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds by electromagnetic forces. These railguns tore through the first wave of Horde ships before they could adapt. "Look at the human vessels," gasped a Virillian officer. "The way they move, it should be impossible." The human ships darted and spun in ways that defied conventional space tactics. They used the moon's gravity to slingshot themselves at the enemy, changing direction with a precision that would kill any Virillian crew from the G-forces alone. "This is Captain Wright," came the transmission to the Virillian command. "First engagement. Successful. We've identified a weakness in their formation. Beginning Phase 2. On the bridge of the Arlington, Chief Engineer Diane Russell worked furiously at her station. "Shield modifications complete, Captain. Emitting radiation frequencies now." The human ships began to pulse with a blue light. Wherever this light touched the Horde vessels, they seemed to slow and lose coordination. "It's working, Lieutenant," Martinez observed from her station. "The frequency is disrupting their collective intelligence. They can't communicate as effectively." Wright nodded. "Thompson, prepare your Marines. Dr. Brown, status of the biological countermeasures?" Dr. Alan Brown looked up from his console. "Ready, sir. The engineered phages should spread through their central mass once deployed." "Good." Wright turned to his tactical officer. "Begin evacuation coverage. I want our ships escorting every Virillian transport that leaves the surface." The battle expanded across the Kethis system. Human fighters, tiny compared to the larger vessels, swarmed around the Horde ships. Lieutenant Commander Eric Powell led these squadrons in maneuvers that seemed suicidal to the watching Virillians. "Pull up! Pull up!" cried a Virillian observer, as a human fighter dove straight toward a Horde vessel. But the human pilot waited until the last possible second before changing course, firing precisely at a vulnerable spot, and then looping away. The Horde ship erupted in flames that quickly died in the vacuum of space. "They're adapting," came the call from the USS Minneapolis, as a group of Horde ships changed their outer hull structure to resist the railgun impacts. Captain Wright's voice remained calm over the communications channel. "That's what they do. That's what we do better. Switch to plasma torpedoes, all ships." The human fleet smoothly transitioned to new weapons. Where the railguns had punched physical holes in the enemy, These plasma weapons washed over them with energy that cooked them from the outside in. Back on Kethis Prime, the evacuation continued. Thousands of Urillians crowded onto transport ships. Children, elders, and civilians boarded first, while their warriors provided what protection they could. Then disaster struck. A group of horde ships broke through the human line and headed straight for the evacuation zone. They ignored the military targets and aimed directly for the transports full of civilians. "They're targeting the children," Zextarl said in horror. "They know our young have the most genetic diversity. They want to consume that first." 3 horde vessels surrounded a large transport carrying over 2,000 Virillian children. The transport had no weapons, no meaningful shields. It would be consumed in minutes. Then a small human shuttle appeared. It was too small for any significant weapons, barely larger than a scout ship. Yet it positioned itself between the transport and the horde. "This is Marine Squad Leader Kyle Thompson," came a gruff voice over the common channel. "We have eyes on the target." Boarding action initiated. The Virillians watched in disbelief as the shuttle doors opened, directly to space. Human figures, in combat suits, launched themselves across the void, propelled by nothing more than small thrusters on their backs. "They're jumping through open space," cried a Virillian officer. The Marines landed on the hull of the nearest horde ship and began cutting their way inside with handheld plasma torches. Once inside, they fought their way toward the core, placing devices as they went. "Charges set," Thompson reported. "Fall back." The Marines jumped away from the horde ship moments before it erupted from within. They repeated this process with the second ship. The third, seemingly learning from its companions, tried to retreat. But 2 human cruisers arrived to finish. On one of the evacuating transports, a young Virillian watched through a viewport as a human Marine drifted past, propelled from an explosion. The human suit was damaged, leaking atmosphere. Yet the Marine still managed to grab onto the transport's hull and pull himself to an airlock. Inside, the human removed his helmet. Blood covered half his face from a gash on his forehead. By Virillian standards, he should have been dead or at least unconscious from such an injury. "Is everyone okay in here?" Marine Squad Leader Thompson asked the frightened Virillians. 2 injured Virillian children lay on the floor where they had fallen during evasive maneuvers. Thompson knelt beside them, pulling medical supplies from his suit. "Impossible," whispered a Virillian medical officer as she watched Thompson treat the children despite his own injuries. "No, sir," replied her assistant, watching the human work with steady hands. "They're human." The battle continued for 3 days. The horde adapted to each human tactic, but the humans adapted faster. When physical weapons became less effective, Dr. Patricia Collins released her engineered phages, microscopic weapons designed to attack the horde's biological components from within. By the 4th day, the horde began to retreat. They had never retreated before. In the Virillian Command Center, Admiral Zextarl watched the human fleet regroup. Nearly a third of their ships showed damage. Several had been lost completely, yet they had achieved what the Confederation had thought impossible. "The evacuation is 87% complete," Trilvex reported. "At current rates, we will save most of our people." Zextarl nodded. "And then?" "Captain Wright has requested a meeting," Trilvex said. "He says it's time to discuss the counterattack." "Counterattack?" Zextarl's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "We've barely survived." "The humans have a saying," Trilvex replied. "Lieutenant Martinez shared it with me. The best defense is a good offense. They don't intend to just save us, Admiral. They intend to destroy the horde completely." The Virillian Council chamber fell silent as Captain Wright explained the human plan. Admiral Zexataral and the other alien leaders listened with growing amazement. "We don't just want to push the horde back," Wright said, pointing to the star map. "We want to eliminate the threat completely." "But how?" asked Science Minister Corpan. "The horde has spread across 12 star systems. They outnumber even your impressive fleet." Captain Lisa Morgan of the USS Lexington stepped forward. She was tall even for a human, with short gray hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "By using their nature against them," she explained. "The horde thinks as one entity. It makes them powerful but also predictable." Strategic Officer Ben Miller, a quiet human with dark skin and quick hands, activated a simulation that showed Horde ships moving in their typical pattern. The Horde always prioritizes high-value targets, Miller said. Genetic diversity, advanced technology, energy sources. We can use that to lead them where we want. Admiral Zexateral's 4 eyes blinked slowly as he considered this. You intend to bait them? To make them chase you? Captain Wright nodded. We call it blood baiting. We present a target too valuable to ignore, then lead them into a trap. The Virillians looked at each other with uncertainty. Their species had evolved as peaceful herbivores. The concept of deliberately provoking a predator went against every survival instinct they possessed. Your ships would be a terrible risk, Trilvex pointed out. Risk is part of the job, Captain Morgan replied with a small smile that showed her teeth. The Virillians tried not to flinch at the predatory display. My Lexington will lead the first strike force. The plan took shape over the next day. The human fleet would split into 3 groups. The largest would continue protecting the Virillian evacuation. The second would defend the remaining Confederation worlds. The third, led by Captain Morgan, would take the fight directly to the Horde. As preparations continued, Admiral Zexateral visited the human ships to see their work firsthand. On the USS Arlington, he watched human engineers repair battle damage with remarkable speed. Chief Engineer Diane Russell worked in a section where a Horde weapon had punched through the hull. The area was temporarily sealed but still dangerous. The temperature was freezing, the air thin. No Virillian could survive such conditions without a full environmental suit, yet Russell wore only a simple breathing mask as she welded metal plates in place. How can she work in these conditions? Zexateral asked Captain Wright. Humans evolved on a world with extreme environments, Wright explained. Diane grew up in northern Alaska, where temperatures regularly fall below freezing. This is uncomfortable for her, but not dangerous. Later, in the ship's medical bay, Zexateral observed Dr. Patricia Collins treating wounded Marines. Squad leader Kyle Thompson sat on an examination table, while Collins stitched a deep gash in his arm. You should have come in sooner, Collins scolded him. This will leave a scar. Thompson shrugged. Just add it to the collection, Doc. Zexateral noticed that both humans seemed unconcerned by the injury or the blood. To a Virillian, such a wound would be life-threatening and cause extreme distress. These humans treated it as a minor inconvenience. The counterattack began 3 days later. Captain Morgan's strike force departed with a dramatic send-off. The remaining human ships formed an honor corridor, flashing lights as the Lexington and its escorts passed. Why do they celebrate before victory? Asked a Virillian officer. They celebrate the attempt, Lieutenant Martinez explained. The willingness to face danger is as important to humans as success. Captain Morgan's force consisted of 15 ships. They headed directly for a system the Horde had recently conquered. Their sensors detected Horde activity almost immediately. They're taking the bait, Morgan reported back to the Arlington. We've got 8 Horde vessels in pursuit. The human ships did not flee at maximum speed. They maintained just enough distance to stay safe while ensuring the Horde continued to follow. More enemy ships joined the chase. 10, then 20, then 50. The Horde is committing significant resources to this pursuit, Strategic Officer Miller noted. They must consider our ships high-value targets. Good, Captain Wright replied. Captain Morgan, status? Proceeding to Phase 2, came Morgan's response. Approaching the Vermilion Nebula now. The Vermilion Nebula was a vast cloud of gas and dust, glowing red from the radiation of nearby stars. It was normally avoided by ships due to sensor interference and navigation hazards. The human fleet had spent days placing special devices throughout the nebula. Morgan's ships entered the nebula with the Horde close behind. Inside the red clouds, the chase became more dangerous. Visibility dropped. Communications became spotty. But the humans had trained for these conditions. Activate the sonic disruptors, Morgan ordered. Throughout the nebula, the hidden devices came to life. They emitted frequencies that humans couldn't hear but that played havoc with the Horde's communication system. The pursuing ships began to lose coordination. Some crashed into each other. Others fired weapons at empty space, confused about the location of their targets. "Now hit them with everything," Morgan commanded. The human ships turned and attacked. What had been prey became predators in an instant. They struck from multiple directions, using the nebula's cover to appear and disappear like ghosts. Meanwhile, the Arlington led a second force to the opposite side of the nebula, trapping the Horde between them. What the Horde had thought was a desperate flight by a small human group was actually a carefully orchestrated plan to lure them into an ambush. "They're adapting to the sonic disruption," reported an officer on the Lexington. "Switch to thermal charges," Morgan ordered without hesitation. The human ships deployed new weapons designed to create extreme heat pockets in the nebula. The temperature differentials created shock waves that the Horde couldn't predict or avoid. After 6 hours of battle, the remaining Horde ships attempted to retreat. But the humans had anticipated this. The USS Minneapolis and its escorts had positioned themselves at the nebula's exit points. "Close the net," ordered Captain Wright from the Arlington. "Don't let any escape." The Virillian observers watched the battle from a safe distance. They had never seen warfare conducted this way. The Horde adapted quickly to each new threat, but the humans adapted faster. When one tactic stopped working, they switched to another without pause or confusion. "The humans don't fight like a military," Admiral Zex Terrell said quietly. "They fight like an ecosystem." Indeed, each human ship operated with both independence and coordination. When communications were jammed, they continued fighting effectively. When one ship was damaged, others adjusted their positions to compensate. They functioned not as a single mind like the Horde, but as individuals within a coordinated force. By the battle's end, the Horde had lost over 200 ships. The humans lost 3, with 7 more damaged. It was the most decisive victory against the Horde in the history of the conflict. "Captain Morgan reports mission successful," Lieutenant Martinez announced on the Arlington's bridge. The Horde Central Intelligence was located and destroyed. For the first time since the Horde had appeared, Admiral Zex Terral allowed himself to feel hope. These strange, dangerous Deathworlders had accomplished in days what the Confederation couldn't achieve in years. "Your people are remarkable," Zex Terral told Captain Wright during their next meeting. Wright's expression remained serious. "We're just doing what we've always done, Admiral. Surviving against the odds." 3 weeks after the Battle of Vermilion Nebula, ships from both fleets gathered around Kethis Prime. The Horde threat had been eliminated. Though some small pockets of Horde activity remained in distant systems, their central intelligence was gone. Without it, the remaining Horde units lost their coordination and purpose. The cost had been high. The Virillian Confederation had lost 8 of their 17 worlds. Billions of their people were now refugees, crowded onto the remaining planets. The humans had lost 27 ships and over 3,000 crew members. Yet there was also hope. For the first time in 2 years, Virillian children played in open parks without fear. Reconstruction had begun on some of the less damaged worlds. And most surprisingly to the Virillians, the humans had not left once the fighting ended. "We don't abandon allies," Captain Wright explained to Admiral Zexa Terral as they walked through a refugee center. Human engineers worked alongside Virillian builders, creating homes for displaced families. "Our ships are helping survey the damaged planets. Some can be restored quickly." Zexa Terral watched a human marine gently lift a section of wall that would have required 5 Virillians to move. The human's physical strength, once so frightening, now seemed reassuring. "The Council has been discussing our future," Zexa Terral said. "Many feel we cannot return to our old ways. The galaxy is more dangerous than we realized." Wright nodded. "Isolation worked until it didn't. That's a lesson Earth learned too long ago." Later that day, Ambassador Trilvex presented a formal proposal to Captain Wright and Fleet Commander Howard. The 3 sat in a room specially prepared to accommodate both species comfortably. The humans had chairs at a proper height, while the Virillians had their traditional cushions. "The Confederation wishes to establish a permanent alliance with Earth," Trilvex announced. "We have much to offer each other." Commander Howard raised an eyebrow. I thought your people feared humans, called us Deathworlders. Trilvex made a gesture that was the Virillian equivalent of a smile. We did. Some still do. But fear can give way to respect, and respect to friendship. Perhaps it is time we learned from those who evolved in danger. The final agreement took shape over the next few days. The Confederation would share their advanced medical technology, faster-than-light communications, and agricultural methods. Earth would provide military protection, engineering expertise, and help with rebuilding. On the day of the signing ceremony, the observation deck of the USS Arlington was transformed. Chief Medical Officer Natalie Peterson had worked with Virillian specialists to create an environment where both species could comfortably gather. The temperature was a compromise between human warmth and Virillian cool. The lighting was adjusted to be visible to Virillian eyes without being too dim for humans. Representatives from all Confederation species attended. For most, it was their first time aboard a human vessel. They moved through the ship with a mixture of curiosity and lingering nervousness, marveling at the solid construction and practical design. It's like a fortress, one Virillian commented, running a three-fingered hand along a metal bulkhead. It's our home, corrected Lieutenant Martinez, who was giving tours to the visitors. Every human ship is built to protect the people inside it, not just to travel between stars. Admiral Zexaterral addressed the gathered crowd first. His speech was brief, but heartfelt. When we sent our distress call, we did so out of desperation. We had heard the stories of Earth, a deadly world that produced equally deadly inhabitants. We feared the humans almost as much as we feared the Horde. He turned to face Captain Wright and the other human officers. We were wrong to fear. Yes, humans are strong. Yes, they fight with a ferocity we find difficult to comprehend. But they fight for life, not against it. They risked themselves for people they had never met, for worlds they had never seen. After the speeches, Admiral Zexaterral presented Captain Wright with a crystalline memorial. It was etched with the names of all who had fallen in the conflict, both human and Confederation. You came when we called, the Admiral said. Though we feared you, you fought for us. The Confederacy will not forget Earth's sacrifice. Captain Wright accepted the memorial with a nod. We came because that's what humans do. When someone's in trouble, we help. The formal partnership between Earth and the Virillian Confederation changed the power balance of the galaxy. Other species who had watched from a distance now sought their own agreements with the humans. Some came out of fear, others out of genuine desire for alliance. Lieutenant Olivia Martinez found herself in high demand as more alien delegations arrived. One evening, after a long day of translation work, she sat with a group of Virillian scholars in the ship's dining area. The aliens had grown comfortable enough with humans to ask personal questions. But why would you risk your lives for a species you had never met? Asked a young Virillian researcher named Pelvor. Martinez smiled. Because we know what it means to fight against extinction. Our world taught us that lesson every day of our evolution. Earth isn't an easy place to live. We have oceans that can swallow cities, mountains that pierce the clouds, deserts that burn, and winters that freeze. We have predators that can kill, with a single bite, and storms that can level everything we build. She paused, looking at the stars visible through the viewport. And maybe that's why we survived. Not just because we're strong, but because we learned to stand together against the dark. Humans don't endure by being the biggest predator. We endure by protecting each other. 6 months later, a monument was unveiled on Kethis Prime. It showed a human and a Virillian standing side by side, looking toward the stars. The plaque bore words in both languages. They came from a world of death. They brought us life. The human fleet eventually returned to Earth, leaving behind teachers, engineers, and a small defense force. Captain Wright stood on the bridge of the Arlington as it prepared for the jump home. Do you think it will last? Asked Commander Howard. This alliance? Wright watched as Kethis Prime grew smaller on the view screen. The once devastated planet now showed signs of recovery. Green parks surrounded new cities. Virillian ships moved alongside human vessels in peaceful cooperation. I think it has to, Wright replied. The galaxy's a dangerous place. Better to face it with friends than alone. As the human fleet departed, their reputation across the stars transformed. They were still the Deathworlders, the dangerous ones, the predators from a hostile planet. But now they were something else too, protectors. The distress call had brought monsters, yes, but monsters who fought for life rather than against it. The Deathworlders would return to their violent, high-gravity world, and the galaxy would never be the same.